Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a show today that will not disappoint you, unlike some disappointing things. This snowstorm, this snowpocalypse, it's nothing.
I can't believe he's downplaying it like this. We had a snowmageddon. If you went outside and felt that hail
It's like
in
this
DC,
much snow.
No, it's like I had snow boots up to here to get to work today.
I drove to work today and it took me less time than usual because there are fewer cars on the street.
I think you just did it to be a martyr, to say, I can handle this. I live in D.C. and I can find my way here. And I believe in our systems that are set up to...
I don't believe in climate change alarmism, and I'm not about to start that up now.
Okay, well, yeah. Robby got his wish. It wasn't so bad, but some of the rest of the country
doesn't
feel the same way.
I told you.
Coming up on Rising, we will, of course, discuss the multiple aspects of the deadly Border Patrol-involved shooting that took place over the weekend in Minneapolis.
Also, Axios has obtained leaked audio showing Senator Ted Cruz bashing President Trump and Vice President Vance in 2025.
And former CNN host Don Lemon says that despite the fact a judge blocked the DOJ's effort to arrest him, he thinks the Trump administration will find a way to get it done. But first, Robby, what's on your radar?
Well, a very serious subject to hit right off the bat today. Customs and Border Protection agents shot and killed a U.S. citizen in Minneapolis, Minnesota, outside a restaurant on Saturday. The victim is 37-year-old Alex Pretti. He was licensed to carry a firearm, and he had one with him. The available footage does not show every detail of what happened, but Pretti was holding a cell phone rather than his gun when the officers initiated contact and when they began wrestling him to the ground. Trump administration officials, including Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem and Deputy White House Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, have already declared the killing completely justified, claiming that Pretti had intended to murder law enforcement agents. But there is no evidence of this, none whatsoever, which is making it difficult for me to avoid the conclusion that, frankly, the administration is just prepared to brazenly lie about what happened. Now, regular viewers will know that I don't say that lightly. I am not generally prone to hyperbole. I think these clashes between law enforcement and the protesters are difficult to scrutinize and have brought out a lot of confident, bold, and wrong claims from people on all sides of the political spectrum. I think it's perfectly plausible that the officer, for instance, who shot Renee Good 2 weeks ago was justified because he did reasonably fear for his life in the moment. That might also be the case here with Alex Pretti once we know more. But that does not excuse members of our government saying things about his death that are verifiably false. And this is becoming a pattern, and I'm getting sick of it. Now, Republican officials, including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and FBI Director Kash Patel, they are taking the position that merely bringing a gun to a protest is a violation of the law or indication of murderous intent. Seriously, take a look. Here was Patel.
As Kristi said, you cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest that you want. It's that simple. You don't have that right to break the law and incite violence. We will, of course, always protect your First Amendment speech. And if you peacefully protest, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But you have seen a trend here, not just in Minnesota, but across the country.
That's very wrong. Here was Bessent.
Have you ever gone to a protest, Jonathan?
I mean, we do have a Second Amendment in this country that...
Jonathan, have you ever gone to a protest?
I mean...
have you gone to a protest?
I mean, no, actually, as a reporter covering it.
Okay, I've been to a protest. Yeah. Guess what? I didn't bring a gun. I brought a billboard.
What are they talking about? They're completely wrong. You can bring a gun to a protest. Of course you can. You can vigorously exercise your Second Amendment rights and your First Amendment rights at the same time. Now, video footage of Pretti's death shows federal agents using pepper spray on the protesters. Pretti appears to be recording the altercation with his cell phone, and then after an agent shoves one of the protesters to the ground, Pretti moves to assist her. Several CBP agents then decide to bring Pretti down. It's conceivable that the agent who shot Pretti had the impression he was reaching for a weapon, though the first shot clearly went off after another agent had already disarmed Pretti. It's also possible that the killer didn't have even that much justification. Yet federal authorities have all but ruled out this possibility and are making abjectly false statements in support of their position. Noem has repeatedly claimed it's a fact Pretti intended to harm officers. She said this individual showed up to law enforcement operations with a weapon and dozens of rounds of ammunition. He wasn't there to peacefully protest. He was there to perpetuate violence. Miller flatly asserted, Stephen Miller, that Pretti was a domestic terrorist who tried to assassinate federal law enforcement. Look, I'm sorry, this is not true. They have no evidence of that Pretti wanted to kill anyone. Even if evidence were unexpectedly to come out tomorrow, later today, that he was secretly a would-be assassin, it would still be wrong for officials to state as fact that he had intended to kill because there are no known facts that establish murder as his motivation. This is a man who was watching officers interact with protesters and recording it on his phone. Contrary to what the Department of Homeland Security wrote on X, he did not approach law enforcement, let alone with a gun drawn. These willful omissions and obvious lies do not inspire confidence on my part that the federal government is interested in discovering the truth of what happened here. That is a glaring indictment of the administration's approach to immigration enforcement specifically and law enforcement in general. And as if quietly conceding that none of the available facts were advancing that narrative, now Republican officials are taking the ludicrous position that possessing a gun in the first place is evidence of intent to cause harm. It is not. Minnesota is a concealed carry state where it is lawful to carry a firearm in a public place. The notion that an individual cannot or should not exercise both his First Amendment and Second Amendment rights simultaneously, that's usually a misguided leftist talking point that I'm used to arguing against. In fact, the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, they took criticism from conservatives and libertarians for becoming squishy on this and advocating against the gun rights of protesters after January 6th. So I'm with Representative Thomas Massie, no surprise there, who wrote on X, carrying a firearm is not a death sentence, it's a constitutionally protected God-given right, and if you don't understand that, you have no business in law enforcement or the government. I'm also with the Gun Owners of America, an advocacy group that writes, the Second Amendment protects Americans' rights to bear arms while protesting, a right the federal government must not infringe upon. More Republicans should take their cues from Massie and from Gun Owners of America. The administration is eager to jettison cherished First and Second Amendment rights to forestall any possibility that a single federal agent might be held responsible for an improper shooting. Look, if they succeed, the GOP will cease to be a political party that even pretends to care about free speech and gun rights. Don't let them succeed at that. So I'm pretty upset about this one. Frankly, it's still somewhat ambiguous. I think it's less ambiguous than the killing of Renee Good, but it doesn't matter. We will find out whatever the facts are. Regardless of what the facts are, what Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller are saying is just not true. They've said he's a domestic terrorist and had a clear motivation there to harm law enforcement. There's no facts to support that. And if you're saying that's our view because he had a gun, well, he's allowed to carry a gun. I support the Second Amendment. So do you people, or so I thought. So they're caught in this really weird contradiction. It's unprofessional. I see a lot of conservatives turning on them. I'm hearing a lot of calls for, send in Tom Homan, please, someone who knows what they're doing, because Kristi Noem and Kash Patel, this isn't Scott Bessent's job, so he just didn't know what he was talking about there, fine. Kash Patel, Kristi Noem, Stephen Miller, very disappointing right now. Gun rights are sacred to conservatives and libertarians. This is getting ridiculous, and I'm pretty upset about it. And I'm usually not this animated to be against something the administration is doing, but I find this indefensible.
Yeah, there are 100 different people that are co-signing, or probably more at this point, Kristi Noem being impeached. And so I think a lot of people within Congress are upset about it. I think when you look at the blatant lies and the mischaracterization, it makes you see, well, if this is happening publicly, what's happening behind closed doors? Sure. And when we see that local officials have been, no pun intended, iced out of the investigations twice now and complaining about it so much that they had to go make sure that they have access and make sure that nothing inappropriate is happening with some of the details from the scene. I think we all should be nervous. When you think about what's happening in Minneapolis altogether, it looks like a dystopian novel, but the only thing is that it's reality. And I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with the idea that the government is just being so adamant about these things that they don't know are true.
Yeah.
It really doesn't take much courage to me to simply say, I don't like what's going on here. This doesn't feel right. It doesn't take much courage for anybody to do that.
It's so easy for the administration, for Kristi Noem and the others to just say, a man is dead. It is sad a person died. We don't know whether the killing was justified under the reasonable use of force standard yet. We will investigate and find out. These situations are lamentable, and then they can say, and it is Democrats' fault because they will not do law enforcement, immigration enforcement themselves. So we've had to send in federal troops, and that is resulting in these clashes, and so it's on them. They can say that, fine. They just can't, but they can't say he's a domestic terrorist and thus he deserved to die. Like, he was there with his phone. He had a gun. He didn't walk up to law enforcement and point a gun at them. That's what DHS said in that tweet. And I'm glad we have video footage. We're debating all this video footage, but the video footage helps establish that is just absolutely not true. So they're making statements that give me no confidence they're interested in just objectively finding out what happened.
And this is one of those times where I'm actually happy about all the different citizen journalists out there and the impact of social media. Usually during these tough times is when, starting from like the Arab Spring with Twitter back in the day, when social media helps us, because had we just been subjected to take the opinions, which they are opinions, of federal authorities, we would have just been lied to and thought that as the truth until someone told a witness account down the line, which now they're getting several witness accounts on paper legally, but we have video and we have eyes, and none of us are federal prosecutors or investigators. But from what we're understanding and seeing, it doesn't look like the same story that we're being told. And so for these instances, I'm extremely appreciative that we don't have to just rely on he said, she said. We know that now the public has the responsibility to hold their local leaders and then federal leaders to account and say, you have to tell us what happened here and you have to do this fairly.
I agree. That's the power of social media, alternative media, and all those such things. Well, we're going to keep talking about this. We're going to do Your Lens next.
So up next, we'll have more on the death of Alex Pretti and the country's response to it. Stick around for My Lens.
All right, Lindsey, what's on your lens?
We're going to talk more about Minnesota. So what happened to Alex Pretti forces us to confront a very uncomfortable truth. When the official story collapses under the weight of video evidence, accountability becomes the real test of democracy. Alex Pretti was an intensive care nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. Born in Illinois, raised in Green Bay, a University of Minnesota graduate, a research scientist who chose nursing, a neighbor, an outdoorsman, and a competitive cyclist, according to friends. According to records, he legally owned a handgun and had a permit to carry in Minnesota. On Saturday, Alex Pretti was holding a phone, recording federal immigration agents when officers escalated the encounter. Now, multiple videos show him pepper sprayed, pulled into the street, pinned onto the ground, and struck. One officer appears to remove a gun from Pretti's waist before shots are fired. 10 shots in less than 5 seconds. Yet within minutes, federal officials labeled him a domestic terrorist, claiming that he intended to, quote, massacre officers. That narrative unraveled almost as quickly as it was issued. Pretti's parents putting it plainly, saying, quote, Alex was a kind-hearted soul who cared deeply for his family and friends, and also the American veterans whom he cared for as an ICU nurse at the Minneapolis VA hospital. Alex wanted to make a difference in this world. Unfortunately, he will not be with us to see his impact. I do not throw around the term hero lightly. However, his last thought and act was to protect a woman. The problem is that once a person is smeared, even evidence struggles to catch up. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz addressed that directly.
The most powerful people in the world, certainly in this country, President, Vice President, Greg Bovino, Kristi Noem, narrate to you what you were looking at, that this was a domestic terrorist, crazed, running at law enforcement with the intent to kill massive numbers of them, sullying his name within minutes of this event happening, and then closing the crime scene, sweeping away the evidence, defying a court order, and not allowing anyone to look at it.
And then he widened the lens.
I don't care if you are conservative and you are flying a Donald Trump flag, you're a libertarian, don't tread on me, you're a democratic socialist of America. This is an inflection point, America. If we cannot all agree that the smearing of an American citizen and besmirching everything they stood for and asking us not to believe what we saw, I don't know what else to tell you.
Even the Obamas weighed in, noting that federal law enforcement officers do have a tough job, but reminding the country, quote, Americans expect them to carry out their duties in a lawful, accountable way and to work with, rather than against, state and local officials to ensure public safety. That's not what we're seeing in Minnesota. They criticize federal agents for, quote, acting with impunity and engaging in tactics that seem to designed to intimidate, harass, provoke, and endanger the residents of an American city. For Black Americans, the story feels painfully familiar. Aggressive tactics in moments that demand de-escalation, narratives written before facts, and humanity treated as optional. Alex Pretti deserved what every person deserves: restraint, truth, and dignity. If we can't agree on that, regardless of politics, then the problem is bigger than one tragedy. It's about who gets believed, who gets protected, and whether evidence still matters in America.
Well, as I said on my radar, I too am pretty furious about what the administration is saying about this incident, prejudging it, describing his motivations, Alex Pretti, that he was a domestic terrorist or that he intended to do harm to law enforcement when there's no evidence of that. Him just carrying a gun is not evidence of that. I must say that over and over again. You have the right to carry a gun. It's a concealed carry state. You can exercise the Second Amendment or the First Amendment at the same time. Even in that video, I don't really, I guess he's resisting. It's hard for me to tell exactly what's going on. They approach him after he tries to help one of the protesters. Maybe he's resisting. I can't quite tell, but he does. Who knows exactly what the circumstances are? It's hard to say from, there's a bunch of people, but I can say pretty confidently they've not given me any reason to think he was there to kill law enforcement agents. So I am upset about that. Look, I think the most rational or reasonable things Republicans can say in response is that this is a mess that results from, I've said it before, Democratic-controlled areas not enforcing immigration laws. Immigration is the purview of the federal government. If they would do that, you wouldn't need to send law enforcement into these areas, and I think that's true. At the same time, the optics of this are, I think, quite bad, and only very committed, very partisan supporters of the mass deportation Stephen Miller scheme seem still on board. A lot of people thought this was going to be about deporting criminals, not just like everyone at any cost, at the cost to American citizens being harassed and killed.
Right.
Is getting to be a little much, and I think there's some indication Trump gets that. I just saw him say on True Social that he was sending in Tom Homan, and they're going to be rethinking what they're doing. In my view, Tom Homan is has demonstrated himself to be a more professional law enforcement personality than, unfortunately, Kristi Noem.
It's surprising thinking about how adamant Tom Homan has been about immigration enforcement. He's been the one on the Sunday show saying, let's let this play out, the investigation play out fully. And I thought that's the appropriate response.
And he wants to do a major crackdown on illegal immigrants who have committed other crimes. And you can do that. These two strategies are at odds, because there are plenty of illegal immigrants who've committed crimes who can be arrested, detained, deported in areas of the country that do participate with law enforcement, in red states. So it would be easier, where you need to commit fewer resources. You can do that, and they want you to do that. But because the path has been chosen to do these very showy standoff encounters in areas where there is not support from the local authorities, you're seeing these kinds of clashes. If it is to break the will to resist or whatever that Democrats are feeling, fine, but this is what it looks like, and I think people are going to lose resolve. Whereas if you want to do a lot of good in terms of the deporting of criminal illegal aliens, Homan's strategy was better and doesn't necessitate these kinds of incidents.
I think that the whole country should look at this and say, why is the burden on the victim to prove his humanity? When you have the most powerful people in the country claiming and deteriorating somebody's legacy, we find ourselves, and why I compared it to the experience of Black Americans, is that we find ourselves trying to make somebody a martyr that could have just been a civilian that didn't deserve to die. And so there's this over-explaining, trying to repair the character that was assassinated prematurely by federal officials sometimes or otherwise. And really, that's not the way forward. And we've learned that too many times as people of color, watching instances be prejudged and then we're overcorrecting. It doesn't matter if Pretti was a stand-up man or not. It matters, did he deserve to die? Did his actions need to lead to death? And is this the immigration policy that we'd like to move forward?
No one deserves to die. It matters, was the officer who shot him, was that a reasonable course of action in the moment? Did that officer reasonably fear for his life? I've said in the Renee Good case that it should be investigated. It's not being investigated. I'm not happy about that. It might be the case that the officer's actions, he thought the car was coming at him, and those actions were reasonable. I think that's perfectly plausible. Maybe it's plausible in this case too. It seems less likely to me that this was a correct. Obviously, we hear Maybe he thought the gun had gone off. Maybe it was accidentally gone off. Maybe he thought it was.
It's just too much benefit of the doubt to be losing lives over it, though. That's what I mean. You're saying if he was scared for his life,
Yeah, but
maybe perhaps
well,
people
everybody
aren't
gets
trained
the
enough
benefit of the
to
doubt.
deal with these circumstances. Well, the person that died should really get the benefit of the doubt here. Someone's lost a life in a family, and immediately their character is assassinated.
I was just saying whether you're going to prosecute someone for for manslaughter or whatever, the burden is on the prosecutors to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt it was not a reasonable course of action, right? Up next, a Florida Democratic congressman says that he was assaulted at a music festival. Don't go anywhere. Representative Maxwell Frost said that he was punched in the face on Friday at the Sundance Film Festival in Park City, Utah, by a man who allegedly told him that President Trump was going to deport him.
Now, the Florida Democrat, who became the first member of Gen Z to win a seat in Congress, took to X writing Friday, quote, "Last night I was assaulted by a man at Sundance Festival who told me Trump was going to deport me before he punched me in the face. He was heard screaming racist remarks as he drunkenly ran off. The individual was arrested and I am okay."
The incident occurred at a private party hosted by the talent agency CAA at the High West Saloon. Park City Police Department said they did respond to a report of an assault and determined that a man had unlawfully entered a private party after previously having been turned away for not having an invitation. The
Sundance Film Festival and representatives released a statement saying, quote, they strongly condemn the incident.
Utah Republican Governor Spencer Cox said in a statement, "Political or racially charged violence of any kind is unacceptable in Utah. I'm grateful to local law enforcement for swiftly apprehending the assailant and for pursuing justice for Representative Maxwell Frost."
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries wrote on X, quote, "I'm horrified by the attack on Congressman Maxwell Frost. The perpetrator must be aggressively prosecuted. Hate and political violence has no place in our country."
Yeah, I mean, what is there to say? It's wrong to assault anyone. It's wrong to assault a congressman. If it was just nasty rhetoric, there would be nothing really to do about it, probably. But he assaulted him. He punched him in the face. So lock him up. I don't know, what is there to debate?
Well, I think these high-profile events, one, need more security, right? I mean, Sundance is a pretty high-profile event. If you're going to invite congressmen, if you're going to have CAA, the biggest talent agency in the world, throwing a party, probably inviting a lot of other celebrities, perhaps there's more of a less risk for people to get in barriers that they weren't supposed to be, because apparently the man wasn't even invited and didn't even have a pass to the festival. And then on the other hand,
I used to be pretty good at sneaking into
events.
Fancy events I had no reason to be at.
Okay, well, they need better security. Especially, I mean, honestly, on a serious note,
keep the Robby Soaves of the world out.
Well, after Charlie Kirk, you really got to keep the crazies out. I don't think it's about Robby
Soaves
who want to have a good time.
I agree with that.
And then also, I think the justice system is working as it should. People responded. He said, "I'm okay," and law enforcement responded quickly. But I also think the gall for people to sit there and say to Maxwell Frost that you need to get deported, it kind of shows in this conversation when you have lunatics that are listening to what's happening and feeling like they should be encouraged to say whatever. They're confident to go up to somebody and tell them that they don't look at them as human. And I think that's a deeper problem that we need to address, that people feel comfortable. And like when we say words, people are like, oh, it's a word, whether we call them undocumented or illegals. Well, when we're calling people illegal, then people think they have the right to scream at them as an American to say, you get out of this country.
Okay, you managed to find something about this subject I disagreed with.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Words are words. It's the violence is the problem. Words are not. There's not a government response to people saying nasty things to you. It's a congressman. He can be heckled. He can be harassed. People could shout nasty things at him. They could do that to anyone else than they do. There's a high bar but absolutely not physical violence. This person engaged in physical violence. That is very bad. You can, from movies and TV where desensitized, we think, you punch someone in the face, they get right back up a moment later. You can permanently harm someone.
Even though he's an American citizen, we're also prone to believe, because of our federal officials, that most people in this country that are immigrants are illegal alien criminals, rapists, the comments that Trump says in order often. Mm-hmm. And so when someone's screaming like a lunatic, it wouldn't be that far-fetched to say, why do they think these things? Oh, because people in the highest leadership positions are telling them. Well,
Maxwell Frost isn't even an immigrant.
He's not, but people are just being racist.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. They're incited by looking at brown people and saying, let me attack them.
They're being violent, which is what I have a problem with.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz had harsh criticisms for President Trump and Vice President Vance in secret audio recordings. Stick around for that. Ted Cruz seems to think Republicans could be in trouble heading into this year's election. That's according to new recordings obtained by Axios, in which the Texas senator can be heard railing against Vice President Vance and President Trump's tariff policy.
The roughly 10 minutes of recordings were from private donor meetings from early and mid-2025. Cruz did not hold back. According to Axios, he repeatedly brought up Vance in the recordings, tying him to conservative commentator Tucker Carlson and accusing him of advancing the podcaster's anti-interventionist foreign policy. Quote, Tucker created JD. JD is Tucker's protege, and they are one and the same, Cruz says. The article also says that Cruz accused both Vance and Carlson of ousting former National Security Advisor Mike Walz, because he allegedly, quote, supported being vigorous against Iran, and accused the two of being behind Walz's short-lived replacement nominee, Daniel Davis, who Cruz called, quote, a guy who viciously hates Israel. According to Axios, Cruz claimed to donors that he helped get Davis quickly removed from consideration. Of course, those claims come as Cruz has been a vocal critic of Carlson, even getting into a spat with him on his podcast last year ahead of the attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities.
But then there's Cruz's attacks on the president himself, and specifically the president's tariff policy. Cruz allegedly told donors that he and a few other senators urged Trump to stand down shortly after the president rolled out the Liberation Day tariffs. But according to Axios, that call, quote, did not go well. Trump was allegedly yelling and cursing, and according to Cruz, after he told the president that the tariffs could cause a midterm election bloodbath, Trump's response was expletive you, Ted. Cruz is widely thought to be considering a 2028 White House bid, which could account for the harsh criticism of the president and vice president behind closed doors, but Cruz's team insists he's still firmly behind the administration. In response to the Axios article detailing the leaked audio, Cruz's team said that he is, quote, the president's greatest ally in the Senate, and later said, quote, attempts at sowing division, like the article, are, quote, pathetic and boring. I mean, I think he's trying to reclaim this foreign policy hawkishness, and he's trying to test the appetite, literally with donors, to see if there's actual money there to fund a campaign that goes back to that Reagan-style leadership. And you say the Republican Party has moved dramatically from even looking more at Bush and Dick Cheney and their style of leadership, they moved far away from that. So this is interesting to see, and it's worth noting that it is a fracture that has to be addressed in the party. Either Trump's reign will continue under J.D. Vance, which is the likely next candidate that follows Trump's lead, or you're going to have Senator Cruz, who's slowly building his case. Like, do you want a traditional Republican Party back? Well, then he thinks he's your guy.
Right. Nobody wants the traditional Republican Party back, though. Maybe donors do. I don't know. Look,
Nobody?
It's interesting because even though these two things get linked, I have totally opposite views on them. On the tariffs, I agree more. I lean more in Ted Cruz's directions. I do think they were bad. I wish more Republicans had stood up to Donald Trump on them. I think the Supreme Court might stand up to Donald Trump on them, and that there is a case to be made that they haven't accomplished much good. A lot of the economic theories behind them that various members of the administration have, that they're going to result in us building everything here, are just stupid and don't make a lot of sense. So I'm with Cruz on that. I'm not with him on the attempt to go backward on foreign policy and be an interventionist. I think if he is the one who's responsible for Daniel Davis not getting a job in the administration, I think that's bad. Daniel Davis is a guest we've had on the program a number of times we used to have on. I think he's very insightful. He does not hate Israel. He just has some of the questions that many Republicans do about what level of support we should have, what level of intervention we should have. Ted Cruz is outside the norm for Republicans on that. He's very focused on that issue. Again, might attract donor money. That might be the right thing to say to people in the crowded rooms. I don't think it's really going to go very far with the base. So I don't really see him contesting the nomination in any successful way very much, but he might make a go of it, and it's his right to. J.D. Vance isn't naturally inherited if he can't win it. J.D. Vance might have some problems with various constituencies. I don't know. But Ted Cruz is not the most, charismatic. I don't know. He's a smart guy.
You don't see him as president?
No, he really, really wants to be president. You know, he was the last man standing in the war against Donald Trump in 2016, virtually. But, yeah, he's welcome to it. And I hope his views on economics and markets and some other things win over in the view, whatever view is going to take over the Republican Party. His foreign policy, less so.
It's interesting because I actually don't really even know where Trump stands on foreign policy, because some of what he campaigned on is the exact opposite of what he's actively doing. And people in MAGA and in the Republican Party are confused about this America First idea versus what's actually happening. So even though Trump is a hair away from saying he wants to be an interventionist in places like Venezuela or Iran, you still see the fact that the way that he's behaving would need to lead to full interventionist policies in order to be successful over there. I mean, to take out Maduro and then have no real plan aside from extracting oil, well, that doesn't lead to democracy. Be given the Nobel Peace Prize as an award because of what you will do, even though you won't commit to having any elections. He's like on the fence about a lot of this stuff. So either he's going to have to go the Ted Cruz route of pushing forward, or he's going to have to go back and talk to the base about what the next steps are. So how does that land with the people who don't like Ted Cruz for those exact reasons if President Trump is doing some of those things right now? I mean, if you don't like the tariffs, that's what you're really arguing about then. The conversation between those two is more about the tariffs, because he seems to be on Ted Cruz's side regarding foreign policy right now. Even it was jumping in with Israel, with Iran the first time for the 12-day war.
It was interesting when he said, that JD is Tucker's creation. I mean, there is friendship and a close relationship between the two. Tucker Carlson's son works in.
You let me know that, I think, like last
office.
week.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
When Tucker visits the White House, it was to meet with JD Vance, not necessarily to meet with Trump, although he did say hello to Trump. Tucker was 5 years ago, was the most important conservative pundit commentator there is, period, number one. Since he's left Fox and since he's taken on the Israel issue to such a degree, he's alienated some people while still, tapping into something the base believes, that we ought to be less involved in the Middle East. I think he's taken it to an extreme that is slightly alienating, and he was basically well-liked by everyone on the right, absolutely everyone, and he's now, his appeal has shrunk a little bit, like Megyn Kelly. But
that's so interesting with their mainstream outlets. They had all this traction where everyone liked them, and then when they go do their own thing, and more of the platforms that you like and support and champion to be the future, they kind of get shunned by let's say half of the party.
Well, maybe not. No, not half of the party. It's that when you're on your own, when you're independent content creator, if you're on YouTube or X or whatever, you learn a lot about who your audience is, more than TV. They used to be on TV, where you don't know. I mean, obviously we have information, but the analytics for who's watching you is much more precise for YouTube and for X, for social media, for the online. And so that creates an incentive to give the people watching you more of exactly what they want. And you silo yourself a little bit more, I think, than you do on TV, where it's still kind of for general audiences.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just the natural journey everyone takes.
Yeah. All right.
Bill Maher once again slamming New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, calling him a straight-up communist. More on that. Stay with us. Bill Maher is back. The late-night host returned to the air on Friday with a new season of his show, Real Time with Bill Maher, and he ripped into New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani on his show, calling the mayor a straight-up communist.
He also restated his prediction that figures like Mamdani will lead to Democrats losing more elections in the future. Let's take a look.
Democrats seem to be having this debate whether or not Mayor Mamdani is a socialist or a democratic socialist. Let me settle it. He's a straight-up communist. How do I know this? Well, I'm reading between the lines when one of his major advisors says, elect more communists. It's fine. It's a belief system. He's allowed to believe it, and people are allowed to vote for it. But if liberals deny it, like he's just going through a goth phase, they're going to lose more elections. This is not a communist country.
Maher also took aim at Sia Weaver, Mamdani's new director of the Office to Protect Tenants, who's come under fire after controversial posts she made on social media were unearthed following her appointment. Maher pointed to her and the mayor as examples of why Democrats should have more moderate candidates.
The choices we get here are either the worst version of crony capitalism or communism, either a side deal for the Trump family every time he does business overseas, or the lady who says, impoverish the white middle class. Oh, yeah, there's a great campaign slogan for you.
This is, of course, not the first time Maher has been highly critical of the newly elected mayor. He's gone on record saying that he thinks Mamdani's policies will be used by Republicans to smear future Democrat candidates. And he's repeatedly called for the Democratic Party to move toward the center rather than farther to the left.
Based Bill Maher, love the guy. He's correct entirely, 1,000% on this. Mamdani is a communist. Sia Weaver is a communist who hates property owners and white people and has no business in government or being in charge of anything. In her comments, she says she wants to reduce the value of home ownership. Her ideas are bad. It's terrifying that he's listening to her. It's terrifying he's in government. Yeah, I agree with everything Bill Maher said. You have the right to vote for it. Fine. It's a disaster. Will it damage Democrats? Now, I guess that's the part where I don't necessarily agree with Bill Maher. I don't know. Democrats love this kind of thing. Maybe this is what they're going to run on, and then it'll be really easy for a lot of independents to say, you know what? All the problems we have with Republicans and Trump aside, the other side is communist, so, oh well.
Bill Maher is like the Democratic Marjorie Taylor Greene, because he literally, what's the point of continuing to say like he's liberal and part of this party if he keeps on condescending every single thing? I haven't heard one positive thing from him. That's why Wanda Sykes was like, just shut up already. Like he takes the time out. Like there's no criticisms around the board to go for all.
If her to shut up, people would lose their
Okay, well, I don't care. She didn't say that. I'm paraphrasing. She said, we've heard it, like you're talking enough. That's what she said. A very kind way to say, be quiet at an award show, because he's always just criticizing. I mean, calling Mamdani a communist is lazy. He's literally trying to put in a government that runs on accountability. I mean, what he's doing is like holding landlords to account, and he's getting upset with that people aren't getting taken advantage of in New York City.
To account.
Yeah, like landlords, like slumlords are taking advantage of people, not fixing things. And he's like, yo, you have like 100 different.
But I've explained this to you. You know why they're not fixing things?
Okay, no.
It's because they have rent control. They can't charge more for the unit, so it doesn't make any financial sense for them to fix things. That's under the policy Mamdani supports. Rent control is a bad policy that traps people in things that don't get fixed in bad situations, because the owners can't make a profit, so they're not going to fix things. That's just like.
But who argues against the things that Mamdani is trying to figure out? He's trying to find housing stability. He's trying to close the gap of widening inequality. Like these are some things that Mamdani stands on. Whether you disagree with him, I don't hear any better plans from Bill Maher, nor do I hear any better plans from Republicans about serious issues like housing or the widening
Build more housing. Build more.
Yeah, I think said Bill Maher said. I'm like, who's that?
Build more housing. That's
and also,
the answer.
I don't think that Democrats are going to lose elections because of labels. I actually completely disagree with him that not adopting. Take example Bernie Sanders. He was on Theo Von's podcast the other day. He's like, Mamdani followed my exact blueprint. Even as much as he's told me that he studied me before, I can see it now. When I was in early days of my career, he's following my exact blueprint. And look at the star that Bernie Sanders became to be. People like your favorite, Joe Rogan. Really fans of Bernie Sanders. He translated across the board, and he also was somebody who was not the establishment. So I don't understand why Mamdani, being this new, fresh person with one idea as a Democrat, needs to paint the picture of all Democrats, especially when we sit here and one segment ago had a conversation of how a Ted Cruz can exist, but also a J.D. Vance can exist and a Trump can exist in one party. And we all know several ideas, different types of leadership, but all in one party, right? And you always like, oh, it's okay. Variety of thought within the MAGA party. It's all, and okay, Mamdani, variety of thought.
Variety from progressive to communist.
Well, you know what? Democrats
wide
lose.
range.
I'll be the one to criticize. Democrats lose when they offer nothing. When their whole plan and policy is to
I hope they lose when they offer communism.
They offer nothing. But when they're offering something, they won. So you hoping they lose, but
Make
they're
America
offering
North Korea again?
No, democratic socialism to Mamdani is pushing forward in New York and holding people to account and making sure that prices go down. And if his strategy works, unlike President Trump's strategies that are not working,
prices go down.
He may actually have a winning argument. And then here we go. The Democrats should follow his lead.
When there is market competition for a thing.
Or
they don't
according
go
to
down
President Trump,
when the government says,
go down.
I order you to go down.
Exactly. So tell Trump to stop threatening people over bringing prices down. He's literally trying to
tell him to stop being a communist.
President Trump is threatening people to bring prices down as we speak, inflation down. So you're just saying that, but this is exactly what President Trump is doing. So apparently people who like Trump like Mamdani. As we see, they like each other. So maybe they should get in line with the policies. And Bill Maher, who sat down and went to dinner or whatever he did with President Trump, should be open to Mamdani since the policies are really similar. he should be open to Mamdani. That's confusing me. He's just talking out of both sides of his mouth and just wants a criticism. He's made a lane and made an identity as the guy who's in the party that criticizes the party the same way MTG did. And if you can't accept and acknowledge that, then you're actually willfully being blind. He's doing the same thing as MTG.
On both sides.
So what's
too much Republican socialism, and then Democrats are traditionally the party associated with socialism. Too much socialism, too much government management of the economy, central planning, all bad. Unleash markets, lower regulation, lower taxes, let the market innovate, and you get lower prices, and you get more of everything, and it's better. We've run this experiment 1,000 times in every country, and everywhere where government leaves markets alone, people get more of the stuff they want at an affordable price.
Give an example. What country is doing better?
Time.
Give an example. What country do you love that the markets are so great that they just are all laissez-faire?
Literally every country that is all of Europe, the U.S., Canada, Australia, New Zealand. China has improved by having a market economy. They don't have a fully market economy, but when they didn't have a market economy at all, they had mass starvation. The Soviet Union had mass starvation. Everywhere that moves from complete government control of the economy to allowing some market developments sees like a tenfold improvement in living standards. And then people like North Korea, who still have a completely centrally managed economy, have widespread starvation and political repression. These things tend to go hand in hand. Sometimes you have market economies and you still have political repression, but if you have no market economy, you always have political repression.
I think that Mamdani is a couple days into his new position, and we should.
There's no political repression yet.
We should give the space to see if his plans work, because if they do, then you'll be in complete silence if New York has a big come up in the next year.
You're right.
But we gave Trump a year and he failed miserably. So allow Mamdani the same space.
Never improved anything ever in the history of humankind. I won't hold my breath. But you're right. We don't have political repression yet.
Hold your breath. Up next, former CNN host Don Lemon says he expects to be charged. We'll be right back after this.
Journalist Don Lemon sat down with former CNN host Alisyn Camerota for an interview on Scripps News.
Lemon addressed the DOJ's efforts to arrest him after he entered a Minnesota church as an anti-ICE protest was happening. A federal appeals court last week had rejected the department's efforts, but there may still be more attempts.
Lemon says it doesn't really matter since he believes the administration will figure out some way to prosecute him. Here he is.
I'm not naive. I think they're probably going to try again and again, as they did with Tish James and Comey and everyone. If one doesn't work, then they try something else, and that fails, and they try something else. It doesn't matter if there's no law to fit. They will try to fit or retrofit something or go around a judge and just do it themselves.
Now, Lemon insisted that he wasn't acting as a protester and that the administration's goal is to get a, quote, big name like him as a victory. The protesters had disrupted the church service because they believed that one of the pastors had collaborated with ICE.
Oh, Don Lemon is such an unserious character.
I don't think so. I think he's a serious journalist with extensive experience doing this job. And I think
he's
that the fact that he was
prime.
covering. Okay, and Tucker Carlson is not.
I'm quoting him. Do you remember that? He said Nikki Haley was
Everybody is going to do things that are not savory in their lifetimes. Are you perfect, Robby? Everybody is going to do things that are unsavory in their lifetime. No. I think that because, let's stick to the facts, the fact that Trump uses the Justice Department and the justice system as a weapon, then we know that this is not that far-fetched. He named examples. The fact that he's looking at Letitia James and trying to figure out how he can get her in trouble. Let me finish. How he can get her in trouble with her hairdresser because of some funds that her hairdresser was using. Now the Justice Department is looking into bringing Letitia James on charges because of that. It's a reach. The president has a history of reaching. His pettiness is strategic. It's what he does. He has a photo of a pen instead of President Biden up in the White House. This is the pettiest president probably of our lifetimes. I don't think it gets any pettier. And so Don Lemon justifiably thinks that he will continue to find ways and new routes to try to prosecute him. That's not that far-fetched for an independent journalist that can read and experience the things that Trump has done to other people in the past. He knows that he might be the target of political retribution just because he wants to silence Don Lemon. And he also silences all people in the media that he doesn't like.
Don Lemon, look, he should not be prosecuted for nothing, obviously. If they find evidence that he was involved in the organizing, the planning, or the staging of that interruption of the church service, well, then he can be prosecuted. If they don't have that and the magistrate was not persuaded that there was evidence, so
it got
then
shut down.
It shouldn't go forward. I can still call him a ridiculous person. When he was interviewing the pastor, he says, but what about their free speech rights? The protesters don't have free speech rights to be in the church. The church is private property. He doesn't know what the First Amendment says or means or does.
Okay.
He's not.
Don Lemon, and obviously the judges involved, felt that he was there documenting the experience. And so they shut it down almost immediately when it got sent to their desk. So it's not happening. So if you find other ways to try to convince people.
You can't just document experiences on other people's property.
He's a journalist. He's documented your boy.
I'm a journalist. I can't
your
barge
boy, your boy in Minnesota
your
was
apartment.
Your boy in
like,
Minnesota
I'm
was documenting experiences.
Kinsley, come here. I'm documenting. So it's like, who? Mommy,
going
who's
the
the
wrong
weird
direction.
man in our apartment?
No, he follows.
He's just
group
a
of protesters
journalist
to see what they're doing. Also, you can't preach the word of God accepting all people in a
stop.
Christian church, and then also start saying
Silence.
except for immigrants because I work
Yes,
for
you
ICE.
can.
Okay, you're a ridiculous pastor. I don't respect that. Don Lemon's asking questions like, how does
respect this anyway?
Well, I don't respect
it's not
what?
for you.
Which part don't I respect? I respect people being pastors, and I respect the fact that ICE can do a civilized job and treat people humanely without killing Americans. I don't respect that somebody's on the leadership board of ICE in their local city, and they also are preaching the good word of Jesus Christ, saying that we accept all people.
I don't know.
So I don't
there
get
are
it.
Millions of religious people who don't see those things in conflict at all, who don't think like law enforcement of illegal immigrants is somehow violating their
the
faith.
treating them inhumanely part is violating. The fact that Americans are dying is violating. These are the parts that's not humane. It's not the fact that we're deporting people. Immigration reform is necessary. The behavior and the aggressive tactics are not. And you are part of the people that implement that and going to local communities, being the leader of a division of ICE.
Yeah, then keep at it. Go into churches and scream at them.
He's
that
documenting. He is a journalist documenting
okay,
what
they're
happened.
just documenting. And
No, the protesters are protesters, and the
this
next
is
step.
silly.
No,
This
it's
is
not
very
silly. I don't think that Don Lemon deserves to be arrested because of this. And if
I
you
didn't
do,
say that he did.
That's wild to me.
I didn't say that he did. But I said if he was the organizers of that stunt can be arrested under the law. And if Don Lemon was one of them and there was evidence, then he could be as well. I didn't say I have that evidence or that, and if there was no evidence, the magistrate was correct to throw it out. Separately, I can object to him as a journalist because he's very silly. That does it for us on Rising Live. Thanks for watching and look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're available anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're surviving the snowstorm.
Snowmageddon.
The no storm. It's fine. Look, you barely even see it.
Snowmageddon.
See you tomorrow.